everything to me. Will you spend the rest of your life with me?
I will. Yes.
Have you ever watched someone walk into a room and felt the entire atmosphere shift, not because they demanded it, not because they tried, but simply because they were? Sit tight, grab your popcorn, because you're about to experience a journey of pain, sacrifice, unexpected love, and the kind of transformation that only happens when two broken people stop running from each other. Welcome to the Soul Affection, where every story touches the heart, every moment feels real, and love is never just simple. It's deep, complicated, and unforgettable. Subscribe to our channel. It keeps us motivated to do more. This will be the only time I ask, so do it now. Thank you. The night Kwon Jaeho was shot, it was raining in Seoul the way it only rains in October, heavy and indifferent, as though the sky had decided to wash something away and didn't particularly care what. 3 bullets. 2 removed cleanly. 1 lodged dangerously close to the spine. His men had not taken him to a hospital. Hospitals meant police reports. Police reports meant questions. Questions meant exposure. Instead, they had driven 40 minutes outside the city to a private medical facility, the kind that existed in the gray space between legal and not, staffed by professionals who had learned that some patients required discretion more than they required sympathy. The facility's night shift had 1 nurse on the critical care floor. Her name was Zara Mensah. She was from Kumasi, Ghana, 28 years old. She had graduated at the top of her nursing program at the University of Ghana, completed an international certification that had taken her 3 years of night studying while working double shifts, and arrived in South Korea 14 months ago on a placement that she had fought for with everything she had. She had not come here for adventure. She had not come here searching for anything beyond the ability to send money home every month without counting coins first. She was checking a patient's drip when they brought him in. She heard them before she saw them, heavy boots, urgent voices, the particular quality of panic that men who are never supposed to panic try very hard to conceal. She stepped into the corridor and found 4 large men in expensive, rain-soaked clothing half-carrying a 5th man whose white dress shirt had gone entirely crimson. "He needs surgery now," the tallest one said. His Korean was sharp, commanding the voice of a man accustomed to being obeyed. Zara assessed the situation in 3 seconds. Gunshot wounds. Blood loss significant, but not yet critical. Patient conscious, barely, but conscious. Eyes open, jaw set, refusing to make a sound despite what had to be extraordinary pain. "Room 3, she said, already moving. "Put him down carefully. I need you all to wait outside." "We stay with him," the tall man said. "You wait outside," Zara repeated, without raising her voice, without breaking stride. "Or I cannot help him. Your choice. You have 5 seconds to make it." There was a moment, the particular charged silence of men deciding whether a woman in scrubs was worth the argument, and then they moved aside. The patient's eyes tracked her as she worked. That was the first thing she noticed. Most patients in this much pain retreated inward, their gaze going somewhere private and distant. This man watched her with complete, focused attention, dark eyes sharp despite the blood loss, taking her in with an intensity that was almost clinical. "Can you tell me your name?" she asked, cutting away his shirt. "Does it matter?" His voice was low and controlled. "Medically, no. But it's easier to help someone when they feel like a person and not a problem." She pressed gauze firmly against the worst wound. "So, name." A pause. "Jaeho. Jaeho." She held his gaze briefly. "I'm Zara. I'm going to take care of you tonight. But I need you to stay awake and I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Something moved through his expression, too quickly for her to name it. "Yes," he said. It was the first time in 11 years that Kwon Jaeho had said yes to anyone without calculating the cost first. He survived the night. The surgeon arrived within the hour and removed the 3rd bullet while Zara monitored his vitals with the focused precision that had made her exceptional at her work. By 3 in the morning, Jaeho was stable, sedated, and breathing evenly in the private recovery room that his men had essentially commandeered from the facility. Zara sat at the nurse's station writing her notes when the tall man, she had learned his name was Ryan, Jaeho's closest lieutenant, appeared at the desk. "He's asking for you," Ryan said. He looked faintly bewildered by this fact. "He should be sleeping." "He doesn't sleep when he doesn't choose to." Zara looked up from her notes. "He was just shot 3 times. "Yes." Ryan's expression suggested this was not, historically, the most dangerous thing that had happened to his employer. "He's still asking for you." She walked into the recovery room to find Jaeho awake, propped slightly against the pillows, looking unreasonably alert for someone 24 hours out of emergency surgery. He was, she noticed with the detached professionalism she had trained herself to maintain, extraordinarily striking, all sharp angles and controlled stillness, a long scar running from his left temple to his jaw, dark tattoos visible at his collar and wrists. "You should be sleeping," she said. "You said that already." His voice was rough from the anesthesia. "Sit down. I'm your nurse, not your employee." "I know." He met her eyes steadily. "Please sit down." She sat. "You're not Korean," he said. "Clearly." "Where are you from?" "Ghana." "Kumasi." "You speak Korean without an accent." "I've been told I have a slight one." "It's barely noticeable." He studied her the way he had in the trauma room, that focused, unhurried attention. "You weren't afraid of my men." "I was a little afraid," she said honestly. "But fear doesn't help patients, so I set it aside." "You set it aside." He repeated the phrase slowly, as though testing its weight. "Most people can't do that. Most people haven't worked a maternity ward during a power outage in a government hospital in Kumasi." She adjusted his fore with practiced hands. "After that, most things feel manageable." He was quiet for a moment. "Why are you in Korea?" "To work. To learn. To send money home." She checked his pulse. "To build something worth building." "For yourself." "For my family first. Then for myself." She looked at him directly. "Why are you asking me these things? You're supposed to be recovering." "I'm trying to understand you." "You don't need to understand me. You need to rest." "I understand everything around me," Jaeho said quietly. "Every person, every motive, every angle. It's how I've survived." He paused. "I don't understand you yet. It's bothering me." Zara stood. "Good night, Jaeho. You're leaving." "I have 4 other patients." She moved toward the door. "And you are not special enough to neglect them." The silence behind her was absolute. Then, very quietly, she heard something she would have bet significant money had not happened in that room in a very long time. He laughed. He stayed at the facility for 6 days. On the 2nd day, he asked her what she was reading during her break. She told him, a Korean novel she was working through to improve her literary vocabulary. He said nothing, but that evening Ryan appeared at the nurse's station with 3 more novels, one of them signed by the author, and a note that said simply, "In case you finish that one." On the 3rd day, she changed his dressings and he didn't make a sound, which she had expected. What she hadn't expected was the way he asked questions the entire time, about wound care, about infection risk, about the anatomy of what had been damaged. Not to distract himself from the pain. To actually understand. She found herself explaining in more detail than she usually did because he absorbed everything immediately and asked follow-up questions that made her think. On the 4th day, his phone rang 12 times in 1 hour. He answered none of them. Ryan stood at the door looking quietly desperate. Zara checked his blood pressure, found it elevated, and told him that whatever was on that phone was going to undo her work if he let it. He turned the phone off. Ryan looked as though he might faint. On the 5th day, Hyunmi arrived. Zara heard her before she saw her, the particular click of heels that announced someone who believed their arrival should be an event. She was beautiful in the way that certain dangerous things were beautiful, precise, polished, every element calculated. She swept into Jaeho's room with the confidence of ownership and emerged 20 minutes later with her composure fractured at the edges, her eyes finding Zara at the nurse's station with an expression that was part assessment, part warning. "You're the nurse," she said. "I am. He talked about you." Hyunmi's voice was controlled, but her eyes were not. "He doesn't talk about people." "I'm his nurse," Zara said. "There's nothing more to say." "No." Hyunmi studied her. "There isn't. And there won't be." She leaned slightly forward. "Kwon Jaeho is not a man you want to be interesting to. The women who have made that mistake have all eventually wished they hadn't." Zara met her gaze steadily. "I appreciate the concern. He needs rest." Visiting hours end at 8. Hyunmi left. Zara did not allow herself to think about the conversation. She was good at that, at filing things away and returning to the work in front of her. It was a skill she had developed young, in a house where resources were scarce and overthinking was a luxury no one could afford. But that night, during her break, she sat with her novel and found she had read the same paragraph 4 times. On the 6th day, he was cleared to leave. Zara was preparing his discharge paperwork when he appeared in the doorway of the nurse's station, upright, dressed in fresh clothes Ryan had brought, moving with only a slight stiffness that most people wouldn't have noticed. "Your discharge instructions are here," she said without looking up. "No strenuous activity for 6 weeks. The antibiotic course must be completed in full. Follow up with a physician in 10 days to check the wound closure." "Look at me," he said. She looked up. He was watching her with that same unreadable intensity, and beneath it, beneath the composure and the control, something she hadn't seen in his face before. Something almost uncertain. "I want to see you again," he said. "Not as a patient. That's not a good idea." "I know. I don't know anything about your world." "I don't want to." "I know that too." "Then why?" "Because," he said quietly, "in 6 days you have spoken to me more honestly than anyone has in over a decade. You have not wanted anything from me. You have not been afraid of me. You have not performed anything." He paused. "Do you know how rare that is?" "In my life." Zara set her pen down. "I'm a nurse. Honesty is part of the job. It's more than that, and you know it." She was quiet for a moment. Outside, Seoul hummed its enormous, indifferent hum. Rain again, it had barely stopped all week. "One coffee," she said finally. "In a public place. Once. And then we see." Something shifted in his face, subtle, barely visible, like the first crack in a dam that has held for years. "Once," he agreed. "And then we see." Once became twice. Twice became a habit neither of them named for a long time. He took her to quiet places, a small tea house in Insadong that he had apparently booked entirely for the two of them, which she only discovered when she noticed the complete absence of other customers and confronted him about it. He looked unrepentant. She made him take her to a normal cafe the following week where they sat in the corner like ordinary people, except for Ryan stationed near the entrance trying to look casual and failing entirely. She learned things about him slowly, the way you learn a landscape, not all at once, but detail by detail, each visit revealing another contour. He had been 17 when he entered the underworld. Not by choice, by inheritance, by circumstance, by the particular mathematics of poverty and loyalty that left young men with options that weren't really options at all. He had clawed his way to the top of it through intelligence and discipline and a capacity for strategic thinking that, in another life, might have made him extraordinary in entirely different ways. He read voraciously, privately, history, economics, philosophy. He had shelves of books in his penthouse that his associates had never once seen him reference, because vulnerability took many forms and intellectualism was one he guarded. He had not been close to anyone in 11 years. Not since his younger brother had been killed in a territorial war that Jaeho had ended with a finality that had made his name a warning in every underworld district in Seoul. He did not talk about his brother. But once, when Zara mentioned her own younger sister, 17, obsessed with mathematics, wanted to be an engineer, Something moved across Jaeho's face that she understood without needing it explained. She told him about Kumasi, about her mother who made the best groundnut soup in the entire neighborhood and ran a small provisions shop and had worked every hour of her life to give her children the education she hadn't had. About her father who had died when Zara was 12, leaving behind a silence in the house that had taken years to stop echoing. About the decision to come to Korea, the fear of it, the grief of leaving, the phone calls home that she scheduled every Sunday and protected like appointments with God. Jaeho listened. He always listened with his entire attention, and she had noticed, because she noticed everything, it was her nature, that he remembered everything she told him. Every name, every detail. He never had to ask twice. 3 months in, Hyunmi reappeared. Not in person this time. Through Ryan, who arrived at Zara's apartment building on a Tuesday evening looking deeply uncomfortable and delivered a message that had been crafted to sound like a suggestion, but was clearly a command. Miss Mensah should consider whether the direction this connection is heading serves her long-term interests. Attached was a file. Inside the file was information, her mother's shop address, her sister's school, the exact amount Zara sent home each month. A demonstration, elegant and cold, of what knowing where someone's vulnerabilities lived could accomplish without a single direct threat being made. Zara sat with it for a long time. Then she called Jaeho. "I need to see you," she said. "Tonight." He arrived in 20 minutes. She showed him the file without saying anything. She watched him read it. She watched the stillness in him become something else, something colder and more dangerous that he contained with visible effort. "Hyunmi," he said. "It wasn't a question." "I assume so. I'll handle it. That's not why I called you." She sat across from him, hands folded on the table. "I called you because I want you to understand something. I am not afraid of this. I am not going to disappear because someone reminded me that I have people I love." She held his gaze. "But I need to know something from you, Jaeho. Before this goes any further. Ask me. Is she as Hyunmi are you and she?" "No." His voice was flat and absolute. "We were once. Years ago. It ended badly. She has never accepted that it ended." He paused. "I should have ensured she had no avenue to reach you. That's my failure. I'm sorry." Zara had not expected the apology. It landed differently than she anticipated, not as a performance, but as the real thing, offered without ceremony. "What happens now?" she asked. "I take care of it. You and your family will be protected, not because of what is between us, but because you're a person who deserves to be safe." He met her eyes. "What is between us, Zara? What do you want that to be?" The question sat in the room between them. Outside, Seoul moved through its October evening, millions of lives intersecting, diverging, choosing. "I want it to be real," she said. "Or nothing. I don't know how to do anything in between." "Neither do I," he said. "I've never tried." "Then maybe we figure it out together." He reached across the table and took her hand. His fingers were scarred, careful, warm. "Together," he said. What followed was not simple. Nothing in Jaeho's world was ever simple. Hyunmi's interference had been the surface of something deeper, a faction within the Council of Families who had decided that Jaeho's interest in a foreign nurse was a liability, a distraction, evidence of a softness they could exploit. Rumors circulated. There were 2 incidents, a car followed, a threatening message left at the hospital where Zara had recently taken a second position. Jaeho's response was swift and absolute, and Zara chose not to ask for details she didn't need. What she focused on was what she could see, that with each passing week, the man across from her was becoming, not softer exactly, but more present. Less defended. More willing to let something exist without calculating its strategic value first. He came to the hospital on a Wednesday afternoon in November and sat in the waiting room for 2 hours without telling anyone why, until Zara's shift ended and she found him there. He said he had been nearby. She knew this was not true, his office was on the other side of Seoul, but she also knew that some truths arrived sideways and didn't need to be straightened. She introduced him to her colleague, a warm Kenyan Korean woman named Adiz, who looked at Zara over Jaeho's shoulder with an expression of pure theatrical disbelief. He met her on a Sunday and sat with her while she called home. Her mother's voice came through the phone warm and enormous, asking 100 questions in Chui, and Zara watched Jaeho watch her face while she talked and laughed and switched between languages, and his expression was the quietest she had ever seen it. Like someone standing in front of something beautiful and not yet sure they were allowed to touch it. Afterward, he said, "Your mother sounds like someone who built something that will outlast her." "She did," Zara said. "She built me." He looked at her for a long moment. "I know." The council meeting happened on a Friday in December. Jaeho stood before 12 of the most powerful men in Seoul's underworld and told them, in terms that required no interpretation, that his personal life was not a matter for collective governance. That his operations remained what they had always been: effective, profitable, controlled. That any man who believed his emotional life constituted a weakness was welcome to test that theory and discover the nature of his error. No one tested it. Hyunmi left Seoul in January. She sent no message. Zara did not expect one. Some endings were not reconciliations, they were simply doors closing, and the best thing you could do was let them close cleanly. In February, Zara's mother came to Seoul. Mrs. Zara Mensah arrived at Incheon Airport in a bright yellow dress that made her look like a piece of Kumasi sunshine had detached itself and decided to go traveling. She was small, round, magnificent, and within 4 minutes of meeting Jaeho, she had taken his face in both her hands, looked at him for a long time with the particular diagnostic intensity of a woman who had raised children and seen everything, and said in English, "You have been very alone for a very long time." Jaeho, who had not been caught off guard by anything or anyone in 11 years, said absolutely nothing. Mrs. Mensah patted his cheek. "You're okay now," she said. "She's a good girl. Don't waste her." Ryan, who had witnessed this exchange, later told Zara it was the most remarkable thing he had seen in 6 years of service, and he had once watched Jaeho walk out of a burning building carrying a man over each shoulder. The dinner that evening was a collision of worlds that somehow produced something better than either had been separately: jollof rice and doenjang jjigae sharing the table, kelawil alongside japchae. Mrs. Mensah teaching Ryan the correct way to eat fufu while Jaeho watched with an expression that Zara had come to recognize as his version of joy: quiet, contained, but completely real. That night, standing on the balcony while her mother slept inside, Zara felt Jaeho appear beside her. Seoul glittered below them, enormous and indifferent and beautiful. "Your mother told me," he said quietly, "that in Chui, the word for nurse and the word for caretaker of the soul are related." "That's not exactly true," Zara said. "But it's a nice way of thinking about it. She also told me that I should stop stalling and say what I actually mean." He turned to face her. She wasn't wrong. Zara turned too. He reached into his jacket pocket and produced a box, simple, dark, no ceremony. Inside was a ring, deep amber stone, the color of Ghanaian Kent gold, set in a clean band that caught the city lights and scattered them softly. "I have spent 11 years being feared," Jaeho said. "I built a life out of other people's fear because it was the only currency I knew. And then a woman from Kumasi told me I wasn't special enough to neglect her other patients." The corner of his mouth moved, and I started to understand that I had been building the wrong thing entirely. Zara pressed her lips together. Her eyes were very bright. "I'm not an easy man," he said. "My world is not clean. I am still becoming something better than I was, and I don't know how long that takes. But I know that I am more honest with you than I have ever been with anyone. I know that you make this city feel like somewhere a person could actually live, instead of just survive." He held her gaze. "Zara Mensah, will you stay?" "Not in this house, not in my world, in my life. As my partner. As the person I am building toward. As your wife," she said. "If you'll have me." She looked at him, this complicated, scarred, slowly becoming man, on a balcony in Seoul in February, with a ring the color of home in his hand. She thought of her grandmother's voice, "Know where you come from. That's what gives you the courage to go somewhere entirely new." "Yes," she said. "But we do this right. No more fear as a tool. No more silence as a strategy. We build something worth being part of." "I know." He slid the ring onto her finger. "You've been telling me that since the night we met. You're a slow learner." "I learn everything eventually." He pulled her close. "I just need the right teacher." Below them, Seoul continued its millions of conversations, its endless negotiation between what was and what could be. Two people stood above it, choosing for the first time, and then again, the harder and more luminous thing. The most feared man in Seoul's underworld had not been moved by power, by beauty, by fear, by loyalty, by wealth, or by any of the 10,000 things people had placed before him over 11 years hoping to find the key. He had been moved by a woman from Kumasi who set her fear aside because patience needed her, who told him he wasn't special enough to neglect other people, who received a threatening file and called him not to run but to speak the truth, who introduced him to her mother and let him sit beside her while she laughed in 3 languages, who asked him to build something worth being part of and then stayed to help him do it. He had been moved by grace, by the particular, unperformable, undefeatable kind. And the whole of Seoul, slowly, would come to feel the difference. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to The Seoul Affection and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. Every story we tell is for you. Every heart we hope to touch is worth every word. See you in the next one.